for your, what was almost an introduction to the bit of the presentation that I'd like to share today. Very quickly, and I know this is going to sound like a punt for Africa Tikkun, but it's, I think, important just to really give you a context of what is meant by a cradle-to-career solution and how that leads ultimately to what is a employable and self-dependent initiative that we are piloting at the moment. Very briefly, if I may, just to say, press the green, is it? Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. In essence, I'm going to talk about one particular program amongst a number of others that typically we would have that are leading young individuals from, as we've suggested, cradle to career. The story was that the organization was started some 30-odd years ago by my late dad, who was both a businessman and a philanthropist, who had the pleasure of being inducted into the world of philanthropy, I believe, by Madiba. The organization started very much as a traditional, vanilla, charitable initiative, heartfelt, strings pulled, finding various different communities and different needs. And about 20-odd years ago, we decided to change that program to become outcome-based. We necessarily realized that pure philanthropy could not necessarily survive unless there was a measured outcome, and that measured outcome had to ultimately be helping young individuals find their way into productive, employable opportunities. The cradle-to-career model really is built around a premise that says, like a parent, and this is really where the idea was born. I looked at my own kids and saw they had gone through situations where they'd been bullied at school, they had experienced death in the family, they'd had their respective challenges. And I woke up to say, well, why are they okay fitting into society, contributing back to society? What were the variables that they were privileged to have? And it wasn't just money that children in township environments did not typically get access to. There were resources that were lacking as a result of the history of apartheid. And they were not just physical resources, very often they were social resources. The ability to have human-to-human connections, to have parents who could actually bring discipline and structure and values into the home. So we started at the very basics, early childhood development. And we created an environment where parents could feel safe to bring their children to our facilities, entrusting us with their greatest belongings of all, their children. And that brought huge responsibilities on us, not just to teach numeracy, literacy, but also necessarily to be able to give young individuals a sense of belief in self. And as they grew in age, so we could take individuals who believed in themselves, believed that they could, and bring into their world skills and support around education. And at the same time, give these individuals the same pleasures and joys that my own children had the pleasure of. Playing sport, being part of drama, acting, being children in a safe and secured environment. That led us then to an environment where children were now ready to leave school with the appropriate, hopefully, results. I'll share some of our results in a second, but roughly about 95, 96% of the youth that come to our centers will matriculate. And at least 60% will actually matriculate with matric, so that enable them to get into universities or tertiary education. Thereafter, we realized, and if I may just share a personal experience, I was in Diepsloot on one particular day, finished a meeting at one of our sites, and I saw a group of about 12 kids that I'd known, because I'd known them over the years, having grown up. I've been 21 years in the Tikkun organization. And they were sitting around at 11 o'clock, and they were sharing a quart of beer, sitting on a South African brewery's beer crate, and I'm not getting paid by breweries, quite frankly, to punt them. And I stopped and I said, what are you guys doing? You guys have spent so many of your years coming to our centers, investing in yourself. We've invested in you. And they explained the very real, tough life situation of how do you get from Diepsloot, and in those days it was 12 Rand, to get a taxi, to come to Sandton, and 12 Rand back. And when you got here, there were already 50 probably individuals who'd interviewed for the job that you didn't really even know what the specs were that you were going to be interviewing for. And the stark reality hit me hard. So we as a philanthropist organization had invested in doing all the right good things, feeding, safe security, help with schoolwork, etc., etc. But in fact, we were letting these children down at probably the most critical phase of their lives. We weren't giving them the ability to access that job market. And so we created a separate organization, African Services, which was formed at the time, enterprise development became the buzzword, to help young individuals develop the competencies and skills, work readiness, basic foundation level, leading ultimately into more sophisticated skills for certain industry sectors. And that's when we're blessed to meet organizations like Rubbies, the Yes Group, who helped effectively us take children to the next level, i.e. to interface now into the working environment. However, what we have realized is that the formal market is not sufficient. There aren't enough formal jobs. So the model that we had created some 20 odd years ago had in fact become somewhat redundant. And we're pivoting now to help young individuals develop competencies and skills such that they can actually take those skills into small businesses and put those businesses onto the World Wide Web, enabling them hopefully to be able to generate revenue streams, albeit even maybe on a project-by-project basis. Maybe only work for 3 or 4 months during the course of a year, but at least learn to progress and give them the access then thereafter through learner management systems that our alumni have access to be able to improve and advance their skills so that 3-4 months might become a 6-month contract and might in fact become potentially a retainer on a more permanent basis. One of the projects, I'll just share quickly with you just some impact stats, and that's my little brag sheet, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. Suffice to say, might look good, those numbers, but when you look at those numbers relative to the need, you'll realize it's a real small drop in the ocean. So at best, what we've got are models, hopefully to share. One of the projects that we have embarked on is a small farm called Green Acres. Green Acres is too small to be run commercially. It's not going to solve employment in the agri world, quite frankly, in and of itself. But what it has done is that it has shown that we can, in fact, implement, first and foremost, skills training around biodiverse farming methodologies, teaching first world farming approaches, not just necessarily putting moroch into the ground or grow more mealies and hope that the weather doesn't necessarily send hailstorms to wipe it out, but rather, in fact, to teach sustainable, non-toxic, organic farming methodologies. And I'm proud to say that if you go to a development that I've been fortunate to be involved in, 9 Yards, you'll find produce on offer there where people are walking past and not saying, "Ach, shame, these poor township kids, look at the product that they've put on the shelves. Ach, shame, let's give them a donation." They're waking up to the fact that the produce that's on those shelves is actually good for them, and that the food that is good for them is being brought to them by young girls who've shown a tenacity to grow out of their environment of poverty, to go into and believe in self and take advantage of the opportunity of farm where they can use farming methodologies to bring best quality, frankly speaking, to the public market. Advancing from that was a program that we were fortunate to have funded by E2, an organization that is funded, that is part and parcel of the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation. And it's a clever concept. What essentially it is, it's a business in a box. It's called a Hydro Coop project. And this is one of a number that we are actually experimenting with and piloting. Essentially, this is a mobile unit where after a 4-month training program, an individual, and currently we have 20 candidates, in fact, one individual who is quite severely physically challenged, are able to actually own and operate their own coop. The coop is essentially, as you can see, it's like a teepee-type structure. On top of it is driven by a solar panel that drives a pump that pumps effectively fluids through a set of pipes into what is a hydroponic structure that surrounds the tunnel. And then underneath that, we farm chickens that produce eggs, and when those laying hens become of a certain age, they obviously are sold for meat. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, quite honestly, but effectively, these are some of the statistics that we've been able to produce in our first year. Over 22,000 chickens produced, over 60,000 vegetables. And if you have a look at some of the economic outcomes, average monthly profit for 20 of these individuals, which accrues to them, is approximately 145,000 rand a month. It's about 3 million odd rand that's generated annually. And these individuals will leave our farm armed with both the skill and the knowledge, not only of how to grow, but how to actually look at the entire value chain. There's a pack shed on the farm, and as I've suggested too, we've got a retailer at 9 yards that necessarily is taking product from us. And part of the youngsters' learning experience is to go, in fact, and work on a weekend selling their produce to the general public. So they truly get a full experience of how to take product, grow it, brand it, pack shed it, and take it to market, knowing what the customer necessarily wants. It's our hope that what we will be able to do from a small little farm like this is to actually train trainers and be able to actually motivate companies, communities, government departments to empower young girls to be able to take these mobile units and others like this and be able to actually create a revenue stream for themselves. And I have no doubt that there will be entrepreneurs who will grow from this, who after having enough money saved will buy their second and their third and employ a potential cadre such that individuals like this can start to build self-sustained, competent individuals capable of running their own business, satisfying both food security, but also satisfying what I believe is even more important, a sense of pride in who and what they are, making a contribution back to the South African society. So thank you, everybody, for giving me some time just to share one example.